Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 480. Tuesday, July the 3rd, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alrighty, let's get right to it. Did you know Stephan Halper, the fat man, has dual citizenship? He has both U.S. and British citizenship. Hear about a lot of people who have dual citizenship who are Israeli, who have American and Israeli citizenship, but you don't hear a lot of people who have both U.S. and British dual citizenship. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? We certainly know that Mr. Halper has a very close relationship with Mr. Dearlove and a lot of other people there in the intelligence, current intelligence officials there in Great Britain. We know about his association there with the think tanks over in Cambridge. There's a lot more to know about Mr. Halper. For example, did the fat man, Mr. Halper, did he know Christopher Steele? It seems it would have almost been impossible for him not to. They both know a lot of the same people who run in the same circles in intelligence and in private intelligence firms and think tankers. Seems to me it would be almost impossible for Stephan Halper, the fat man, not to have known Christopher Steele. Or Mr. Downer, or possibly Mr. Mifsud. Here's another good question. Was Stephan Halper feeding Christopher Steele? Was he one of those collectors? One of those intermediaries? Somebody needs to have a talk with Mr. Halper. He was just interviewed a couple of weeks ago for a book. We know, that was what's his name? That was the other guy. But we know that Halper has a farm in Virginia when he's here in the U.S. as a U.S. citizen, and we know that he stays basically in London when he's in London, where he also has citizenship. I wonder if Nunes' committee, the House Intelligence Committee, or if the oversight committees, or any of these people, or if Mr. Horowitz, or Mr. Huber, or if anybody else has attempted to interview Mr. Halper. Something tells me he would not make himself available for that unless he absolutely had to. He sure is keeping a low profile for a guy who was quite the busybody back in the summer and fall, and even the summer and fall of 2016, and even actually quite active in 2015. For a guy who was on the move all over the place, making lots of appearances through back channels, doing all sorts of things. He was quite the busybody back then. Today, you don't hear a peep out of this guy. What does that tell you? Suspicious. Very, very suspicious. But yes, Stephan Halper, the fat man, has both U.S. and British citizenship. Well, it looks like we better build that wall fast. And we better build it twice as high. Because Mexico just got a new president. And I predict within the next 5 years, certainly 10, if not 5, somewhere in the very near future, that Mexico is going to look a lot like Venezuela. How about that? Venezuela, right on our border. How do you think that's going to work out? You think it's bad now? My oh my. Yes, they've elected this socialist, hardcore socialist. I looked at his agenda. It's frightening. And one of the things he says openly in his agenda is that part of his economic plan is to send as many Mexicans across the border as he can to work in the U.S. to have them earn money here and then send it back to Mexico. That's his economic plan. Send Mexicans here to earn money so they can send it back to Mexico. That's a wonderful economic plan. Now, apparently, Trump had a conversation with him and congratulated him on his victory. And he said that they had a good conversation and that they expect that they'll have to work together and all these sorts of things. But something tells me that Trump has already looked at that agenda. I mean, it's public. It was right there in the paper or anywhere you wanted to look. He had like a 10-point agenda. It's all bad. But the worst thing on the list, one of the worst things on the list, is the idea that his economic recovery plan is to send Mexican workers into the U.S., have them make money here, and then send it back to Mexico. Trump can't be happy about that. Better build that wall. You better build it fast, and you better build it high. Because as bad as it is in Mexico right now, when this guy gets done, he's essentially Hugo Chavez, another version of it. Now, despite what you see going on in Venezuela, you would think that the people in Mexico would look at that and go, holy smoke, we certainly don't want to be like the people in Venezuela. But no, apparently they looked at the people in Venezuela and the situation there and said, hey, check out Venezuela. It's a total basket case. They're even worse off than we are. Maybe we need to elect a guy who's just like the guy that they have that brought about that great socialist utopia that they're now experiencing. Maybe we can have a socialist utopia like they have. Absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. That an entire nation of people could look just to the south and see a disaster and see clearly why the disaster is happening and then ask to visit that upon themselves and then to go vote for it. Build that wall, build it fast, and build it high. Because Venezuela is going to be on our border in 5 to 10 years. I believe the Venezuelan currency right now is inflated to the point of, I think it's 40,000%. 40,000% inflation. That's what they'll be looking at in Mexico. I mean, we bailed out the peso twice in the last 40 years. Well, 50 years. We're going to bail out the peso again? I don't think so. Not when they choose to go down this path. Build the damn wall. And just consider the fact, accept the fact that everything south of the border is gone, baby, gone. There ain't a sane government anywhere near. I mean, this is unbelievable. Alrighty. Nunes, Devin Nunes, chair of the House Intelligence Committee, has sent another letter to Gowdy and Goodlatte. This time he's got a list. If you remember last week, he sent them a list of 17 people that he thinks that they should interview. And it's my understanding that they agree and they do plan on interviewing these people. And Nunes is saying, hey, these need to be open hearings. Open hearings. And Goodlatte and Gowdy are saying, yeah, you know, we want to have all these open hearings, but they're saying that what they want to do is they first want to interview all these people, get their statements, whether it's, you know, closed doors, whatever. And once they get all the facts, and this is a fact-gathering set of hearings right now, and then once they get all the facts from all the witnesses and all the documents, then they want to have open hearings and bring all these people back and have the open hearings, and then based on all the information they've taken in from their investigation, then to have all these people sit for open hearings, including Strzok and Page and all the rest. So this appears to be the game plan. So in addition to the 17 people that were on the list Nunes provided Goodlatte and Gowdy last week, he sent them another list of 10 people, and these people are specifically from the State Department. The department that the Rotten Reverend Clinton was formerly in charge of. These people would be the following. Elizabeth Dibble. She's the former deputy chief of the U.S. Embassy in London. She is the person who Alexander Downer, Down the Hatch Downer, went to and told about the conversation with Papadopoulos. Elizabeth Dibble. She was the first link in the chain from Downer to what would become the State Department and then to the FBI. First link in the chain. Then we have Victoria Nuland, Victoria F. the EU Nuland, the former Deputy Chief of the U.S. Embassy, the Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasian Affairs. Then we have Jonathan Weiner. Oh, we know what a big role he played. He was moving both dossiers in both directions. Close friend of the Rotten Reverend Clinton. He was the former Chief of Staff to John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam. Kathleen Kavlik, Newland's deputy. Louis Lukens, the current deputy chief at the London Embassy. Thomas Williams, the deputy chief under Elizabeth Dibble. Jake Sullivan, we certainly heard his name come up before. He was the top former policy advisor to the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Jake Sullivan. Colin Kahl, who was an Obama aide. And also Shayla Murray, who was Biden's aide, who's married to, and she's also married to, as well as being Biden's aide, she's married to a guy who works at Confusion GPS. Now, what's interesting about all this? Devin Nunes looking into the State Department and what role they may have played. Well, we all know the role that they played. They played the role of the courier. They are the ones who moved the fake intelligence narrative, the fake Trump-Russia narrative, and all the fake evidence that went with it from the intelligence side to the FBI via the State Department. As we know, with the 6-agency task force, oddly, the State Department was not included. They were excluded. Why is that? You're putting together the 6-agency task force, one of the most important agencies that you would certainly want, especially in an issue that involves Russia and the international politics and things. You would certainly want the State Department as a part of that. But they were excluded. I wonder why. Well, actually, I don't wonder why. I know why. A lot of people might wonder why. It's because they had to be kept out of the loop, because they were going to be used as the courier. They had to be kept in the dark. All these things going on around them, they had to be able to have plausible deniability, even if they knew about the 6-agency task force, even if they knew about the operations, the insurance policy, whatever, even if they knew about everything, they purposely had to be kept out of this group because they need plausible deniability. They need to be able to look and say, hey, we just heard about this dossier from Jonathan Weiner, who of course works for the State Department, used to work for the Rotten Reverend Clinton, very good friend of Christopher Steele. He just happened to be the perfect intermediary who stumbled on to this dossier by Steele and thought, I guess I'll take it to my boss, Victoria Nuland, and see what she wants to do about it. At the same time, he's taken this other dossier by Cody Shearer, a Clinton apparatchik and hitman, and political hitman, and he's moving that also in another direction. He's moving that to Steele. So Mr. Weiner acting as quite the intermediary. And we see that the State Department is essentially used as the vehicle to move the information out of the intelligence realm and into the law enforcement realm through the FBI. So they had to be kept out of the loop to give them plausible deniability to move the information. That's exactly what was going on. Nunes has probably already figured this out. He just has to take each step one at a time. And when he gets done with the State Department, where do you think he ends up next? Where does this all lead him? It leads him back to you, Mr. Potato Head, and the 6-agency task force. Well, this should entertain you a little bit. Cucky Chucky Schumer was supposed to do a town hall in Brooklyn, New York on Monday, but it was canceled after he was having problems with his flight. This left attendees sitting in a hot synagogue for over an hour. With no air conditioning, it was well over 90 degrees in the synagogue. People were dying in there. So, they had to essentially cancel it after about an hour. So they said, okay, I guess you can leave. Chucky ain't going to show. But what they did was Chucky gave his constituents a phone number to call where they could ask Chuck the Cuck some questions. Of course, they weren't very happy about that. And one attendee who was there told this reporter that they wanted to have him there to show they wanted him to show his leadership and tell them what he was going to do to unite the Democratic Communist Party. The attendees left the synagogue with a cardboard cutout of Chuck the Cuck, and they posed with it outside, giving it the thumbs down. It's now trending on Twitter. And it appears that many of these people were angry with Chuck the Cuck for his shameful pushing back on Maxine Waters for her comments calling for people to harass members of the Trump campaign. Now, Schumer's whereabouts are currently unknown. Yeah, his great leadership. Which, along with Nancy Pelosi, Madam Botox, has cost you over 1,000 seats in the last 5 elections, including losing the White House. Even with $1.2 billion, the entire news media, the intelligence agencies, law enforcement agencies, the entire Obama administration, foreign governments, and everyone else, and you still lost. That's the people. This is the guy you people there in his district believe that you think should be there to show his leadership? Well, I have to say, this may be a first on TowerGate, but I've got to give the dumbass of the week to those Chuck Schumer supporters who were there waiting for him in that 100-degree heat for no reason. They've got a cardboard cutout of Chucky, but that's all they got. They won't actually get Chucky in person. He ain't getting anywhere near that, man. He's been watching. He knows what's going on. He knows it'll be a mob scene. He knows those people might drag him out and hang him from a lamppost because he's not far to the left enough, because he now is a senator of a Democratic Communist Party. Yes, I know democratic communism is a stupid term. We're talking about stupid people. Democratic socialism is pretty stupid too. I gotta say that the dumbasses of the week are those people who expect that Cucky Chucky Schumer is going to provide any leadership at all to march them out of the hole that they're in. He's the one that marched them into the hole. And they're no help. They're farther to the left than he is. They're nuts. They're dumbasses. And they're my dumbass of the week. Chucky Schumer's voting district. I bet that's a real jewel. My God. I'll find out what district that is. If I'm ever in New York, I will avoid it. Jeez. Cucky Chuck made the right decision not to show up. Exactly. Well, the police have arrested a man after threatening Rand Paul and his family with an axe. He was, of course, threatening to kill Rand Paul's entire family with an axe. He apparently is a Democratic communist from Berkeley. His name is Nathaniel Luffman. Yeah, when you threaten to axe murder a U.S. senator, you're probably going to get arrested. You're probably going to be charged and convicted as well, Mr. Luffman, and you should be. I don't know what the jail sentence is for threatening to axe murder a senator and his family, but I'm guessing could be a lengthy jail term for this guy. What an idiot. Talk about unglued, man. They're beyond unglued. Hey, I guess you've all heard LeBron James is going to the Lakers out there in La La Land. Well, he'll fit right in out there. He's been up here in Cleveland for the longest time. Was in Cleveland, left Cleveland, came back to Cleveland. Now he's going back out to L.A., but he better prepare himself because he's been used to these Ohio taxes, which are quite low. He's headed out to La La Land, and his taxes are going to go up by 300%. Whatever he's been paying in taxes in Ohio, he's going to be paying more than 3 times the tax rate out there in La La Land. I wonder if they consider that in his package, you might say. His financial package, which I'm sure is over $100 million easily. Not that he can't afford to pay the higher taxes, because he can, but still, even rich people don't like 300% tax increases. Get used to it. Enjoy life out there in the hellhole. Not that Cleveland's any better. Maybe Cleveland, is it an upgrade to go from Cleveland to Los Angeles? That is a tough one. That is a tough one. So the Senate Intelligence Committee is still trying to hold a hearing with Christopher Steele. Oh, I'm sure they are. They've been trying this for over a year now, but Steele's attorney keeps giving them the runaround. Back on October 4th of 2017, 9 months ago, Mr. Burr, the anti-Trump Republican deep state gatekeeper, stated the committee cannot really decide the credibility of the dossier without understanding who paid for it and who Steele's sources were and who his subsources were. Why don't you go ask Uncle Bob? Apparently they interviewed him, and apparently Steele told him. I got a clue for you, Mr. Burr. Maybe some of his sources and subsources were guys named Mr. Halper, the fat man. Maybe some of them were named Mr. Weiner. Maybe some of them were named Mr. Downer. Maybe some of them were friends of John Brennan. Maybe some of them were friends of Peter's Been Stroking Us. I think you'll find that is who your sources were, your collectors, if you dig deep enough. Now, of course, Mr. Burr and the Senate Intelligence Committee has no interest whatsoever in getting to the bottom of anything or getting to the truth of anything about the deep state coup. What they want is they want to bring in Christopher Steele to make him look like he's this really highly respectable, great guy. They want to sit him down there in front of the committee with the C-SPAN cameras on and throw him softball questions after first building up his character and reputation to make him look like a really great guy. And then he's going to make this compelling argument about his great sources and this and that, although he won't reveal his sources, certainly not in open hearings. He's there to try to do a sales job to try to salvage the dossier, which they're still trying to prove, and they can't prove. And Christopher Steele knows he'll look like an idiot if he sits there and tries to prove the dossier is true. He's not going to do that. And how do we know that? We know that because just recently, Mr. Gervitz, the attorney for Mr. Gubarev, was asked about how he felt about Steele's recent deposition in the UK, and he said that they felt very good about the deposition that Steele gave. What does that mean? It means that Steele obviously answered in the same way, consistent with the answers he gave in the court filings about a year ago, where he said that he could not verify anything in the dossier. He did not attempt to verify anything in the dossier. He told the FBI that the dossier was not confirmed, that it was raw intelligence, that he never met with any of the actual sources, that he used collectors who used intermediaries. And so this is essentially what he must have said again to be consistent in his most recent deposition. That's why Mr. Gervitz was very happy with his deposition. That's why, the same reason why, Christopher Steele doesn't want to come in and sit down in front of a Senate Intelligence Committee. because he also probably knows that while he's in town, that other committee that looks into intelligence matters, the House Intelligence Committee with Devin Nunes and all the rest, and then probably the Oversight Committee with Goodlatte and Gowdy, and then probably the Judiciary Committee with Grassley. They probably all will want to have a crack at him too while he's in town. He ain't getting anywhere near this stuff, folks. Nowhere near it. But apparently Uncle Bob went over and interviewed him, and apparently learned about who his sources and things were, which we'll never learn from the Mueller report, which is why we need a real independent investigation. Well, we have Judge Emmett Sullivan, who has now ordered a status hearing for July the 10th at 10 o'clock a.m. Flynn is also being ordered to attend. That's interesting. Now, if he would just... Now, we know it shouldn't surprise us, based on his most recent comment, the fact that Uncle Bob the executioner and the Hillary donor posse just requested their third request for delay in sentencing. This is a case where you had the defendant cop a plea. He pled guilty a long time ago. Yet there's been 3 requests for extensions for sentencing. Apparently because of ongoing things with investigations that might have something to do with Flynn. And they're talking about the 302s. Is what they're talking about. They just don't say it, but that's what they're talking about. And we know that Mr. Sullivan, Judge Sullivan, had requested those 302s. Now, if he just would have set this court date and said, no, Uncle Bob, your request for a third delay, we're going to have to talk about that. So I want you in my courtroom on July the 10th at 10 o'clock a.m. so we can have a discussion about that. But that's not exactly everything that's going on. We know that he also sent word to Flynn's attorney and said, Michael Flynn, you need to be here too. I wonder what that means. Why would he need Flynn there? If he's just going to have Uncle Bob in there to tell Uncle Bob, hey, this third delay, you're going to have to give me a real damn good reason for a third delay. You got this guy to plead guilty a long time ago. This case should have been done and over, sentenced and gone. Third delay, what's going on? But he wants Flynn there too. I don't necessarily think he's going to dismiss the case or that he's going to come out and make some great bombshell. But I do believe that he wants Flynn and his attorney there because he's going to disclose something to Uncle Bob the executioner that he doesn't want to hear. And it probably has something to do with the fact that he's going to say, if I grant you this third delay, this will be the last one. And don't let me find out when this thing is over that we have sentenced someone based on falsified 302s. Because if I find out that happened, when we get to truth about what happened with these 302s, which is under investigation, I've seen them, the Congress is looking at them, the IG's looking at them, we're going to find out what happened with those 302s. And if I find out that you, Uncle Bob, were aware of the alterations of 302s, and you brought this case, I'm going to throw your ass and your entire Hillary donor posse in jail. You'll be the ones in jail. And I won't be copying a plea deal with you. I think that's what he's going to tell Uncle Bob. That's just my thoughts on that subject. Could be wrong. Well, I continue to follow the situation in Iran. You just knew it was going to get a lot worse before it gets better, right? Well, that's what's happening now. We are now in, I guess, day 7 or day 8. Today, Tuesday, be, I guess, day 8 of these protests, which are all over the country in Iran. Apparently, they have major water shortages in addition to a lot of other problems they have there. But it appears now that the promise that the Ayatollah said day before yesterday that he would start, shooting people, that's what they're actually doing now. So they are actually now arresting large numbers of protesters and shooting them. So now it's getting very bloody. This is upping the ante. One of two things happens at this point. Either the protesters back down, say, oh, now they're shooting at us. I guess we have to shut it down, or else it brings another 5 million people out onto the street. One of two things. The Iranians have a history of being revolutionaries. They've had 3 or 4 revolutions in the last 50 years. We know they know how to revolt. Whether or not this is going to work, whether or not it's going to put them down, this would certainly be the last card that the regime has to play. If shooting the protesters doesn't work, if that only brings more of them out, and it just continues to get more and more ugly, then it's probably very, very close to the end of the collapse of the regime. Pretty soon, one day we'll wake up and read in the news that the leadership of Iran has flown the coop. They caught a jet and got the hell out of there, and they're somewhere else. Don't know where. Maybe Syria. I don't know. They don't have a lot of friends. So, and I don't know that Syria is any safer than Iran. But things are definitely heating up in Iran. And it's sad to report that they're actually shooting demonstrators now. So that's not good. Or maybe it is good. I mean, you know, it's not good they're being shot. But it means that, you know, to get rid of that regime, it's probably what you're going to have to do. It's going to, you know, a lot of people are going to probably get killed in the process. But maybe the rest of the people who survive it will actually get a much better country at the end of it all. Mad Maxine Waters was on MSNBC on Sunday, slamming Madam Botox, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck the Cuck Schumer for not backing her. And she said that the two will do anything to protect their leadership. Yes! Mad Max finally got one thing right. And you just know behind closed doors, they've had to tell her to shut the hell up. You know? They've had to send some aides down to her office and say, do us a favor, go down to Maxine Waters' office and let her know the leadership would prefer it if she would put the zipper on it. She's not helping. And she don't care. I mean, she's dumber than a rock anyway. She doesn't know any better. She thinks it's great. She thinks she's doing great. She thinks she's going to start this national movement behind her, and she's going to become this great political figure like Martin Luther King or something, and that she's going to lead this great counter-revolution against an elected president. That's called a coup. It's called a revolution. It's called a counter-revolution. It's called, you know, whatever you want to call it, but it's the type of thing that gets a lot of people usually locked up in jail and sometimes hanged for treason. I don't know if she realizes what she's actually doing. I don't know if she realizes that that's actually called treason or sedition or whatever. You can't really do that, Mad Max, in the U.S. of America. You can't stage revolutionary, counter-revolutionary coup d'etats. You moron. So the Democrats, the Democratic communists, are turning on themselves. Well, North Korea is in a interesting state right now. Mike Pompeo is there now, and Bolton is also working there now as well. So it's really two things are happening. The very first, and the two things that really have to happen, and they're doing it exactly the right way. This shows you that there's some actually brains, and this thing has been thought out. Pompeo has thought this thing out along with Trump. They understand how this is going to work. You're really not going to get North Korea to give up their nukes or have a reason or be able to justify, Kim Jong-un cannot justify to his people around him giving up the nukes as long as they're still in a state of war, which they are. They currently have a ceasefire. So what they need to do is first end the war. In other words, a peace treaty. Sign a peace treaty. It's all lovey-dovey. It's all peaceful now. Then the threats about using military force against each other, whoever it is, it can all die down and go away, which will pave the way to denuclearize. So Pompeo is working on putting together the deal to sign the peace accord, which will end the Korean War, which will be a major, major event. And then John Bolton is working on the de-nuking part, which he says that he can have North Korea denuked within a year, which means that they must be pretty close to having the peace agreement, and probably in the next couple of weeks they're going to announce a formal peace. This is my opinion. In my opinion, in the next couple of weeks they'll probably announce a formal ceremony to sign a peace agreement, which will of course be a peace agreement with North and South Korea, the United States, and anyone else that was part of that ceasefire agreement. Maybe China. I'm not sure how many people are involved in that originally, but I know the U.S., North and South Korea at least will be a part of signing that peace agreement.